Hey there gardeners, Chris here from Garden Steading, and I'm going to plant a little baby lychee tree in my garden today. We're looking for a good spot. We've got, I think, everything we need except probably a shovel. We've got some water with some seaweed mixture in it. We've got our little lychee here, which is only, I don't know, half a metre tall, maybe 60 centimetres tall, or about 2 foot. We've got some of our delivery soil to put in as well, and we've got some sugarcane mulch to use basically as just a little bit of mulch over the top to help keep the moisture in. It is spring here in Australia, great time to plant. However, it has been really warm and we haven't had much rain in quite a long while. So I'm hoping we can get this into our shade garden, give it a really good spot, get it quite well established over spring, and then it should survive through summer. Fingers crossed. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring across a bag of this coconut core, I believe it is, core husk. And we're going to put a little bit in the base of the hole for this plant, mainly because, as I said, it's really dry, and this will just give that ground a little bit of moisture retention, because these like good drainage, but moist soil, which is a little bit of a contradiction, especially if you're on more of a sandy location here, which is kind of peppered with clay, which is not the greatest combo in some cases. Tip to the wise, if you're planting something, particularly if you're recording it on camera, I would go and start to dig the hole and make sure that you're actually going to be able to get the plant in. Obviously this is our little lychee here, which is in full bloom, which is quite cool. Essentially speaking, you want to make sure there are no big rocks in the way of your hole, that there are no roots in the way of your hole, and of course that you can dig it down and that there's nothing soil-wise that may be a problem. We do have a little bit of clay here once you dig down deep enough, which obviously isn't great for drainage. However, this section of the garden is dry, and realistically the whole garden is dry. There are a few very wet patches where the clay is very close to the surface. However, generally I would say it's probably more typical of kind of native Australian areas where it is quite dry in the ground there. I've dug that hole. I thought to myself, maybe that's a little bit too dry. I don't know whether the lychee is going to go well here. We do have some big gum trees over that direction. We've got all the camphor laurel behind me, which are a weed that need to be removed eventually, but we need to replace them with something else, which is basically going to continue providing that good protection, and wind protection is a concern on our lychee. We're just going to give this a try. Obviously this is a really expensive tree at I think around the $80 mark, which is pricey I would say, and so normally I'd really try and find a really good spot for it. I think the problem with the lychee is that it's a finicky tree. No matter where I put it, I'm probably going to have to be a little bit more careful with watering it, and at the end of the day I think probably our conditions aren't really perfect for the tree, and so as a result of that I'm just going to need to baby it a little bit. I can't allow that to stop me from putting the tree in, because half the stuff in this garden wouldn't be planted if I was, too worried about that kind of stuff. So we're just going to dig this down a little bit deeper so that I can put some more of our good soil and of our core at the base of this hole. We're not fertilizing this tree. I've been told not to because it could kill it. And yeah, we're going to get it in the ground. So let's talk the lychee or lychee, and this is the chinensis, I believe. They do like frost-free environments, so you're looking at your warm temperate, subtropical or tropical environments, and they're quite a fragile tree from all the research I've done. You want to protect them with a shade cloth if they're out in real full sun, which hopefully won't be necessary for where I'm planting it, but that is something to keep in mind. And they do prefer cool, dry winters, which is a little bit of a stranger one when you think about that tropical or subtropical kind of environment. I'm not 100% sure if in northern New South Wales, if we're far enough north, that this will be suitable, but we're going to give it a go. Normally you'd plant in spring or autumn, year round, obviously in the tropics where it's a more suitable environment, and it's spring now, so we've got that covered. And you want to protect from wind, which again was part of the reason for planting it here. They do recommend 6 hours of sunlight. I find the sunlight recommendation a really hard one because I try and follow it and then it varies so greatly throughout the year, and also the light here in Australia and the sunlight is so bright it can, I think, probably overwhelm a lot of things. Moist, well-drained soil with lots of organic matter. So we have added that. It is good drainage here, but it's not the most naturally moist part of the garden, simply because we do have some surrounding trees, and it's just, we're not the kind of moistest of grounds here, just naturally. However, we do have the drainage, generally speaking. As far as how long you're going to have to wait to get a crop out of one of these trees, they reckon 3 to 5 years. This one here is covered in flowers, which is absolutely beautiful. Apparently they set both male and female flowers, and I think you need them to overlap to get your fruit, but that shouldn't be too much of a concern. However, the real crop, assuming you can keep the tree alive, is at about 10 years, and that's when you're really going to see your return on investment. They do grow up to 15 meters, so that is huge, but you can also train them to stay smaller, and they're an evergreen tree, so they're going to be nice looking all year round with a very kind of tropical foliage. As I already mentioned, they set male and female flowers during kind of that winter period, from what I understand. And the big caveat with these is, do not fertilize them in the first few years. Apparently that will kill them. And certainly when I bought this at the fruit tree fella in Kendall, he said he'd heard from the people who were growing these, they'd fertilized a whole heap of them and basically killed off a whole heap of stock because they just did not react well to it. So in that way, it's kind of a little bit like a jujube. Obviously, you're going to water well during establishment. That is a point that is made and is highly recommended, and certainly something we're going to have to do here because it's just a bit of a drier environment. Hopefully, once established, it'll be less of an issue, and maybe if we can build up the soil to a bit better quality, that will hold moisture better. Water well, grow in a pot until 1.5 meters is another recommendation. If you don't want to chuck it straight in the ground, you can grow it in a pot. This is probably only 0.6 meters or 2 foot tall, so you could grow it in a pot just with a high quality potting mix until it grows up to that 1.5 meter mark, at which point you'd introduce it to the location you're going to plant it and get it acclimatized and get it in the ground. And if you're thinking of trying to get the plant established a bit more as far as size before you do that, that might be a good thing, and you are recommended to just move it up in pot sizes to suit that growth. So that is another interesting thing. I think if we don't have luck with our lychee growing in the ground, maybe we'll try the pot route and we will grow it up to a much bigger size and then introduce it to a better spot in the garden. And if you are doing that and you're thinking well ahead, you can probably cultivate a really, really good spot in your garden as far as kind of the soil, the organic matter, the drainage, everything like that, specifically for your lychee as you grow it larger in a pot. So that can work quite well as well, but I'm too impatient for that kind of thing. So we've given our lychee here a really good water into this location. As I already mentioned, we've kind of amended the soil a little bit to suit it more. We are not fertilizing this tree because that is the big one warning that I've seen in multiple locations. This tree is actually covered in little flowers at the moment, which is really, really cool, really beautiful. It's got just a huge amount of flowers on it, in fact, and it's looking quite good, but we have been keeping it nice and damp when we had it by the house waiting to be planted. And so the big question is going to be whether this is going to survive in this location. And obviously we are going to need to be quite proactive to water it because it's spring now, the second month of spring now that we're in October. And it's really, really dry, and certainly last year over those summer months it was really dry as well. And so things that are a little bit more sensitive are going to need that extra care. And I've actually noticed a couple of other plants that are no doubt going to need a bit of water, which is our discount jaboticas, or jaboticabas I should say. I always say that wrong because they're looking very, very frazzled indeed. And also our canistel, it's not looking too good either, and I think it's just because it's been so hot, which hopefully we can get them through. Hopefully our lychee will go well, but we'll have to see. And certainly I will be doing updates to let you know how we've gone with this, and fingers crossed we have some success, because I would love some lychees. We bought some from a little market stall recently. They were really disappointing because they were obviously just so far overripe and they were real expensive. We didn't even eat most of them, they were that bad. But a good lychee is absolutely stunning and amazing to eat, and growing your own obviously is even more special.